notes. I've got one student who's got this A4 lever arch file that's properly full with tabs, and there's highlighting and there's post-it notes, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And ask her what's in it, and bless her heart, despite all the work she's put in, she has no idea. Every so often I get a little email that says, I don't understand my maths.
Get an email.
Apparently that's modern parenting.
Yeah.
It's interesting looking at students that I've got today who actually I see a little bit of me in. And actually I find that quite useful because I can go, oh yes, I remember doing this and I know where this is going to end. With a number of my students, we've taken it as an opportunity to go, right, we're going to go and read a book because we like it. You can understand literature so much better if you put it in historical context. So often I walk into a session and somebody says to me, oh my God, I've got an essay that's due tomorrow and I don't know how to talk about it. And so if I do plan, then it tends to get torn up anyway. So...
Welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast. I'm your host, Ludo Miller, and I'll be interviewing tutors and thought leaders from across the tutoring landscape to inspire, inform, and motivate you to become the best tutor you can be. The Qualified Tutor community is a safe and supportive space for tutors who love to learn and grow. We offer training, resources, ideas, and a chance to connect with like-minded tutors. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org or find it in the show notes. Welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast. Today we are delighted to be welcoming on Nicola Burkinshaw, who is an English and history tutor with many years of experience. So Nicola's career as a tutor was started off as meant to be a bit of a hobby, but now tutors full time, like so many other wonderful tutors we've come across in recent months. Nicola is a self-confessed readaholic. Nicola said to me when we last spoke, "You're safe behind a book, aren't you?" Which, by the way, I love as a phrase. I think that phrase will give so many tutors and students such confidence in their skills and in their kind of reading ability. So Nicola has built her service out considerably over the past 4 or so years, and you can find out all about Nicola's work, including her blogs, resources, subjects taught, and more on englishandhistorytutor.com, which will be in the show notes below. But today we'll be diving into Nicola's tips for how we inspire students and how Nicola has found our students' goalposts have changed kind of over the last few months. So Nicola, it's a pleasure to welcome you on as a fellow professional in the tutoring field.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Really good, thank you.
Very good. So it's always a good move to dive straight in, and I think as we mentioned before, and as so many listeners will have remembered from past podcasts, that there's one question that sets out our guests from the very beginning and gives a really good insight into how they were as a student and how that's led to them now as a member of the educational field. So Nicola, what kind of a student were you?
This was the scariest question that you asked me, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've decided that I've actually got 2 answers. In that, there's what I thought I was like, and there's what I was actually like. And what I thought I was like was I thought I was very, very hardworking and very intensely interested in academia and that sort of thing. What I was actually like was in a state of panic all the time because I was always really, really scared of not being brilliant, because being okay, as far as I was concerned, was simply not acceptable. So although I really wanted to be really, really academic and really wanted to get the A stars as they were then and, go off and do great academic things, I wasn't really doing that because I was so worried that I wouldn't achieve it. So actually, if you ask my teachers, they'd probably tell me, tell you that I was terribly disorganized and things like that, despite the fact I really wanted to do well. And it's interesting looking at students that I've got today who actually I see a little bit of me in. And actually, I find that quite useful because I can go, oh, yes, I remember doing this and I know where this is going to end.
Yeah, so I've heard that a few times before. I wanted to ask as well, is this something that you say to them? Is this something that you let on to your tutors, that you go, oh, you know, I see a lot of myself in you? Or do you tend to hang back and keep that to yourself?
Really depends. Depends on the student, depends where we are in our relationship, as it were. You know, it's not something I would say on the first time I meet them. And also one thing I would say is, although I might see elements, we all have a very different experience. So, you know, I might see somebody who is disorganized and not getting work completed, but their reasons for that may well come from a completely different place. So I try to avoid saying it, and you know, unless I know them quite well, at which point, you know, we may well have a bit of a joke about it. You know,
at which point they probably have maybe realized that already at that stage in the relationship, as you say. And then that's such a key point that you brought up there, is actually that you know, that relationship not only allows learning to increase, but actually brings out so many of these other things, and actually, you know, creates that partnership between a student and tutor that way, you know, that we're really searching for. So that's really interesting. It's funny to see that, you know, to hear that you have these two sides, one that you've come to realize perhaps you are more like, perhaps that reveals a lot, and I'm sure many other tutors share that. So on the subject of that, really, and maybe we've touched on that already, what do you see as your objective as a tutor?
it really depends on the student. I think the key word that we just used is relationship. A large proportion of my students have been with me for a significant amount of time. So I've got kids that I started with in Key Stage 3 and who are now doing A levels. You know, so a number of them I've been working with for 2 or 3, 4 years. And that relationship allows us to do something different. What happens in the school, what happens in the classroom. You know, classroom teachers do an incredible job, and you know, I used to do it, and frankly, I'm not cut out for it anymore. It's completely beyond me. But tutors are fulfilling a different need, and it is to do with creating an environment in which a student can thrive, which is different to a classroom. A classroom is there for a mass of people. What you're doing is creating a space for an individual that is designed for that individual. And of course, it's about making them make progress, or helping them make progress. And that comes from building their confidence. And again, confidence, I think, is a key point in all of this. You know, there are no students who don't want to learn. And there's no such thing as a stupid student. There's just students who haven't found their way or haven't found their reason. And your job as a tutor is to help them find that. But I think on the other side of that is you do need to think about, if you are starting out as a tutor, you need to think about what you don't want to do and what you don't want to be as well. You know, if you have, for example, left teaching in a classroom, then there's no point becoming a tutor and doing exactly what you used to do in the classroom. If you really hate the way everything's so very exam focused, then you know, don't offer yourself as a tutor who's guaranteeing grade 9s and things like that. For me, exams are a useful marker, but they are a byproduct of learning. And for me, my main objective is to inspire confidence and progress their learning, and everything else is a bonus.
So it may have come as great news to you then that exams this year for many students won't be taking place then?
To some extent, yes. Without wanting to dive into the politics of it, obviously, the more notice everybody has about what's going on, the better, obviously. Using exams to measure students doesn't measure every aspect of a student and doesn't measure every aspect of their ability. It measures how well they can do an exam. And while that is not a useless piece of information, it's not necessarily the most useful piece of information. And what I'm seeing with a number of my students, there are some who are sat there going, I've been working towards these exams all my life, and now they've been taken away, and I don't know what my purpose is anymore. And there are some who feel like that, and I feel hugely for them. But there's a significant proportion as well who have been totally freed by it, because they are now really embracing the idea that everything that they do now is actively moving them towards their grade, not just an hour and a half on a Friday afternoon, drafty sports hall. It's everything is moving them towards that. And so they really are embracing that idea of progress and improvement and that sort of thing. And obviously it's, from perspective of managing it and all that sort of thing, that's we'll see what happens, what the reality of it's like. But theoretically, measuring kids on what they've done over a period of time, I can't help feeling is a healthier way to do things.
Yeah, so going further on that, for a tutor perhaps who only started tutoring recently and has always been working towards exams and has then been hit by this news, how does our strategy change as a tutor when exams are gone?
This year, personally, and I would imagine most tutors will been following the same sort of attitude that I have, which is actually it doesn't change. Except insofar as we're not, teaching people to work to time or anything like that. But if we have been teaching about skills and we've been teaching about content and we've been teaching about how to produce an essay or, how to analyze a piece of writing, those skills are still necessary and they're still needed. And actually what we've got now is a little bit of freedom. I know that a lot of schools have been going quite assessment crazy, and again, completely understandably, because they haven't really known what they've been working with, so they're desperately building up evidence. But from students' perspective, there are an awful lot of very tired, very drained, and quite bored students out there. And so this is, again, with a number of my students, we've taken it as an opportunity to go, right, we're going to go and read a book because we like it. And we're going to go and analyse why we like it. We're going to do it for the fun of it. And you know what? We are going to do some learning. That's going to come out of that naturally. But there's no point just, going over and over exam questions and things, because we're not going to do an exam. And that's great. We can go and investigate historical rabbit holes on Wikipedia, disappear down the causes of the Russian Civil War and things like that, and do it because we're interested. And actually, if you start doing that first of all, I think that's just generally really good for students, because it moves them away from that mindset that learning is about getting a grade and into, well, let's do this because it's fun, which is definitely a healthier way to be.
There we go. There it is. It's fun. And there's undoubtedly a correlation between exams going and students having more fun. But I think it's perhaps a little bit deeper than that. But no, that's incredibly useful to draw out there in how we move our goalposts slightly from when exams change. Easter is normally traditionally a big period for preparing students for exams, and even those tutors whose primary goal as a tutor is to build their students' confidence and ability in a wide range of skills. Even those kind of tutors traditionally would move towards exam prep and pass papers in this period. So there's going to be a big change this Easter, and we're not wholly unprepared for it. Obviously this time last year we were thinking the same thing, but we're much more prepared now, and we've had another year of this disrupted learning. So I feel tutors have built, and students have built, that resilience. So looking slightly further ahead, Nicola, and perhaps this is something that you've given an increasing amount of thought to recently. What does this summer and kind of building into the start of the next academic year hold for tutors?
I think there's going to be a real emphasis on transition, basically, because certainly if you look at the year groups that have just, for example, for those who deal with younger kids who've dealt with year sixes who've gone into year 7 in the September just gone, those kids have had a really difficult time because they've gone into a new school and it's all they've been locked down again and it's all been changed. We've got those kids who are making their GCSE choices and going in to start GCSE, but with the best will in the world, have not had quite the same preparation for that they might have had. And you've got those who are finishing their GCSE going into A levels, and again not necessarily getting that access to preparation that they might do. The focus is, I would suggest, I know that there is a lot of talk about catch up. Personally, I'm not sure that that's necessarily a particularly, again, I'm going to use the word healthy, a healthy way to approach things. Who do you need to catch up with if everybody has fallen behind? Maybe it isn't useful to talk about that. But what we do need to do is get back into that idea again of progress and moving people on and getting them back into, not necessarily back into, like I said before, not necessarily back into exam mindset and things like that, but back into regular learning, back into, the demands of school in general. Getting people back used to that sort of lifestyle, which is going to be a shock to the system to all of us on Monday, frankly. We're all going to be slightly taken aback by that. But I think over the summer, there will be talk about catch-up and things like that. But most importantly is just get people back used to normality. Students and teachers and parents, actually, isn't it? That's everybody.
I think so, yeah. But let's not forget parents in this situation. This is going to. I was tutoring yesterday, and I was speaking to the father of my student, and he was saying, almost whispering to me, while the student was sat there saying, I was asking him about the return to school, and he went, "Yeah, it's going to be so good for the children, and me and my wife are going to have a huge party as well." I think it's, really, we can't underestimate what the effects, the impact this has had on parents. Who are often, forgotten in this wider debate about schools and students' progress and not missing out and catch up. So that's a really important point to pull out. And obviously, as a mother yourself, as a parent yourself, that's something that's very dear to you. I think what's interesting is this conversation is being recorded just before the return to school on Monday, the 8th of March, but it will, listeners will be hearing it, just a couple of weeks after schools have gone out. So I hope we're not tempting fate. I hope that the return to school by this point, as listeners are hearing it, has gone smoothly, and that we're not back out of school again, or there's disrupted learning, or there's homeschooling, all of those things. So, but I just want to sidestep. So that's been a really good discussion there about exams and how we as tutors can prepare for exams or the lack of, and what this summer may hold in terms of kind of progress and transition. I think that's really helpful stuff there. But your goal as a tutor, Nicola, is all over your website and kind of the work you do is that you help to build students' confidence. You've mentioned before that you see tutoring as an opportunity to turn a subject into a passion, rather than, as you said, something that you have to take in order to pass an exam. So I wanted to know, really, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into how you think we inspire a student's confidence. On the one hand, when academic goals and deadlines are so uncertain, but perhaps just more generally, what are your tips for building that confidence when things are uncertain?
I think, first of all, you need to know your student and know where they are. You've got to have clarity of what they are able to do. Often, my first session with the student is always just a chat, and it always starts out as just a chat. And it's, and I'll ask them, I'll ask them why they want to work with me, to which they sometimes will say, because my mum told me to. At which point you start to get an idea of what's going on. Often what you find is that you have these kids who are, as far as they can tell, are doing all the things that they ought to be doing, and yet not hitting the marks that they want. And again, this comes down to the fact that classroom teachers, as hard as they work, are spread way too thinly and can't possibly give the sort of feedback that they need. So when you talk to the students and you start to get an idea of what they're doing, you can usually spot pretty quickly where the problems are. And in fact, there's only really a very small number of problems, certainly in my subjects, there's only really a very small number of areas that need work. And they're usually fairly predictable and quite fixable. And it's really about making sure that the student is brave enough to do what they need to do. In my subjects, the big thing that always stops students is planning. It's a lack of planning, actually, because you will tell students, right, so you're going to write this essay, and then you get to sort of plan it all out, and then you go away and write it. And what they're doing is writing an essay without ever actually looking at the plan, for example. And when I talk to students about it, it is all about confidence, because again, if we go back to an exam situation, what happens is they go into an exam, they've got 45 minutes to write an essay, and they go, I can't spend 15 minutes planning, I've got to spend that much time writing. And it's a lack of confidence. So there's an element of it's about repetition, but there's also an element of them seeing the difference and demonstrating the difference between doing it this way and doing it that way. And the other a really obvious example is revision. I've got a huge number of wonderful students who work really, really hard. And what they do is they produce these incredible notes. I've got one student who's got this A4 lever arch file that's properly full with tabs, and there's highlighting and there's post-it notes, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And ask her what's in it, and bless her heart, despite all the work she's put in, she has no idea. And that's not through lack of work, and it's not because she's stupid or anything like that. It's because what she's done is safe. Because copying something out is a safe way to revise, because she knows what she's doing, and she knows if she's copied it out, then she knows she's put down the right words. When you've got their confidence, you can start to get someone like this student go, okay, no, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself a question about this, and I'm going to mind map some possibilities. Or yes, I'm going to make myself a timeline. I do like a good timeline, the historian, that's my favourite. But if I'm going to make a timeline, I'm not just going to say this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. I'm going to identify the things that are economically significant, and I'm going to identify points on the timeline when there are particular tensions or whatever. And it's about getting students out of a comfort zone, which is there because they're scared, and putting them in a position where they can try and do something a little bit more risky. And again, ultimately, it does come down to a relationship, them feeling that they can do things and get them wrong with you, that they can say things and not feel stupid about them. And to some extent, I do think that it's important as well that they recognise that you are not perfect as well, that you make mistakes and you try things and they go wrong, and then you try something else, and they start to see the whole thing as a necessary part of the process of learning, rather than just you have to be perfect first time round.
Yeah, that's a brilliant message to end on as well. Not searching for perfection in everything you do is a a handy life tip for anyone, let alone just for a student.
Absolutely.
And really important for also for sort of calming students down if the work gets a bit too tough, or if they don't understand a point and you've already been over it a couple of times. It's fine. You don't have to get it this time. Let's revisit it, move on, revisit it next time. If you don't get it that time, that's also fine. We'll look back at it, another time. We'll look at it in a different way, perhaps. Or, lots of resources coming out now that have been available and used by tutors for centuries, but which are now being spread to the kind of to the wider tutoring community of, ask them to draw the topic instead of writing about it. If it's an essay, ask them to draw it, or ask them to record a little film. Obviously we're so tech capable these days with everything being moved online, that recording a short video about your topic, asking your tutor to give a short presentation about the topic, asking your student to give a short presentation about the topic. These are all different ways just to bring bring the topic alive, especially if they're struggling with it. And kind of on that theme, I'd love to finish on the kind of practical tips that tutors can leave with. You're someone who moved to tutoring from teaching and now makes it your full-time profession. What 3 tips would you have for a tutor just starting out?
I would say, first of all, in terms of, I touched on it a moment ago, in terms of your knowledge, obviously you want to know your stuff, of course you do. But don't pretend that you know everything, and don't try to know everything. I mean, as I say, I'm a historian. I offer myself to teach GCSE to A level. I've covered many of the main topics, but there will be people who come to me and say, I want to do this topic for A level, and I won't ever have looked at it at all. And sometimes that's the most successful tutoring, because you learn alongside them. So be willing to say, I don't know about it, let's find out together. And also be willing to be wrong occasionally. That's very important. I think second of all, really know, if you're tutoring online, know your tech. It sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But you don't have to have lots of flashy tech. You don't need to. If you're not a technologically literate or technologically confident sort of person, you don't need to be all singing and dancing. Ultimately, tutoring is a conversation more than anything else. But know what you're using, and make sure that you're comfortable with it, and remember that your students are probably learning too, because frankly we've all had a steep learning curve, and we're all Zoom experts now pretty much, but with everybody starts somewhere. I think sort of the final thing is, and again this comes down to relationships, and it's not always an easy one to bear in mind, but always assume that your student wants to learn. I see quite often on tutoring forums, people say, oh, this student just doesn't want to engage with me, and so on and so forth. And the question is always in my head, well, why don't they want to? Because I can honestly say I've never encountered a child who doesn't want to do well. I've encountered many children who don't know how to do well, but I've never encountered one who doesn't want to do well. And it's our job as tutors to find a way in. And if they appear to be resistant, then we need to try something new. And that can be quite difficult for us to do. And sometimes it's a case of they need a different tutor. Sometimes the relationship doesn't work, and we need to accept that. But ultimately, every student wants to learn.
Maybe that could be the title of the podcast. Every student wants to learn.
Why not?
It's a great sentiment, and important for all tutors to remember. Important for a tutor just starting out to remember, who might. Sometimes we see the first sessions are a bit rocky, and maybe that tutor suddenly thinks, you know what, actually this isn't. I'm not cut out for this. I can't do it. No one wants to learn with me. I'm not good enough. No, step back. The student does want to learn. It can be contextual factors like they're having a bad day, or find the topic particularly hard, or something as simple as they really want dinner at that point. It can be anything really. And we've all come across these very contextual factors that don't affect a child's wider learning. But to be quite honest, Nicola, I think all of our listeners, including myself, would benefit from a tutoring session with you. So maybe that's what we can start rolling out, sort of competition. Win a free session with Nicola. Not free for you, of course. That's such a handy and concise kind of run through of your experiences and what you've learned since lockdown. Obviously, you've been tutoring much before lockdown began, but that's put you in a very good position to see, to kind of understand that transition and how other tutors might be going through it.
Yes. Oh, good. Gosh, well, thank you for that. That was a learning curve for me as well.
Well, very good. I mean, this podcast as well is invites on people who are podcast veterans, but also those who are just starting this new medium of getting their name and their business out there. So we very much enjoy welcoming on, all areas of the education industry, all levels of podcast awareness, and we would love to have you back on, Nicola.
Oh, lovely! Yeah, absolutely.
in a few months' time, when we've seen how the end of term is finished, and really when we can drill down into what tutors can be doing now in the summer, maybe kind of in June or July, it would be a good time. But thank you so much. There's so much in there. I really do thank you for taking the time to research those, your responses there, and to make them really kind of beneficial to tutors. So
no, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Very good. Okay, and as I said, please do find more. Contact Nicola on Facebook or on Instagram, or find everything on her website, englishandhistorytutor.com. So there's a little bit of extra reading for you. Okay, bye then, Nicola.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Qualified Tutor podcast, where tutors share their expertise to support the tutoring community. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org, or find it in the show notes below. We exist to connect, share, and learn with you, because tutoring is a small job that makes a big difference.